This is Valley News Live at 10.
Thanks for joining us tonight at 10. I'm Justin Betty.
And I'm Stacey Van Dyke. Today's resignation of the head of the Secret Service comes after calls for her to resign from North Dakota lawmakers.
We showed you last week how North Dakota U.S. Senator Kevin Cramer was among a group of lawmakers who followed Kimberly Cheadle at the Republican National Convention, trying to get answers about how they allowed the assassination attempt on Donald Trump to happen.
Valley News Team's Ethan Cramer caught up with Cramer and Representative Kelly Armstrong today.
The Secret Service's solemn mission is to protect our nation's leaders. On July 13th, we failed.
On Tuesday afternoon, the director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, resigned from her position following mounting pressure from lawmakers. North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer tells Valley News Live he's not shocked at all.
It didn't surprise me that she stepped down. Frankly, I think it was the best thing for her, the best thing for the Secret Service. But there are still a lot of questions that have to be answered. Just because she resigned doesn't mean she's off the hook.
Representative Kelly Armstrong knew this was coming the moment when Chairman Cramer and Ranking Member Raskin had sent a bipartisan letter calling for Cheadle to step down.
Probably in trouble when Chairman Cramer and Ranking Member Raskin immediately after the hearing sent a bipartisan letter calling for your resignation. But in reality, I mean, she was going to be forced to resign the minute the shot occurred. I mean, it's the most strategic Secret Service failure since JFK.
Cramer believes she was very guarded during her testimony to the House Oversight Committee, and that frustrated both Republicans and Democrats.
She's very guarded, which is exactly the opposite of what you need to be in the position she's in. The fact that she frustrated not just Republicans but Democrats as well.
A frustration that lawmakers had with Cheadle was how the Secret Service knew there was a threat and still let former President Trump on the stage.
Greatest frustration was the question about why could you inform the counter sniper team 20 minutes before the shooting that there's a threat, but not warn the president who's about to step on stage.
Armstrong touched upon the importance of decision making and how they are using their resources when protecting presidential candidates.
It's operationally and how they're making decisions, how they're providing resources, and how they're ensuring that, candidates for president of the greatest country in the history of the world are adequately protected.
Following her resignation, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandra Mayorkas appointed Deputy Director Ronald Rowe as the acting director of the Secret Service. Reporting in Fargo, Ethan Cramer, Valley News Live.